Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Side of the Ruck, proudly sponsored by Hook and Flanker. I'm Tash,
I'm Bernice.
and we're not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a ruck is.
Well, we might have disappeared for a week just for a brief
Mhm.
break, but we are back and we will be previewing the Investec Champions Cup round 16 that will be taking place this Easter weekend. And I mean, you can just spend your entire Easter sat in front of the TV watching this one. We'll be offering our thoughts about the teams playing in this competition this weekend, offering some previews and predictions in this episode. So let's get into it. We've got a Friday fixture kicking us off. Northampton Saints versus Cast. Saturday is very full on. Toulon v Stormers, Bath v Saracens, Toulouse versus Bristol, Glasgow Warriors versus the Vodacom Bulls, Harlequins v Sale, and on Sunday, Bordeaux hosts Leicester Tigers and Leinster hosts Edinburgh. Any of those fixtures, Bernice, that stand out to you particularly?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited for the Champions Cup to return, even though my team's not in it. I'm still very much excited for it, and I think the Champions Cup as a neutral is such an amazing competition because you really get the strongest teams playing against each other. So I'm looking forward to this. I think there are quite a few fixtures that actually stand out to me. I
Mm,
think Toulon versus Stormers. I think Glasgow
yeah.
Warriors versus Vodacom Bulls. I also think Bordeaux versus Leicester because I think you've mentioned it, but Leicester is definitely a dark horse. But we've also seen in what great form Bordeaux has been.
Yes.
And obviously, I see them selecting their strongest side with all of the French players returning and looking forward to those fixtures. I think those are the ones that definitely stand out to me. I think Bath versus Saracens just because of, it's an English derby and I think that
Yeah,
will
yeah.
also be good. But yeah, which ones catches your eye?
I'm going to have to say the first one on Friday night, Northampton versus Cast. I'm pretty sure the
Mm,
two sides played each other in the knockouts last year, and it was pretty neck for neck
mm,
until Saints brought on their bench. But you
mm,
wouldn't be surprised if Saints are really trying to reach that final again and right the wrong
mm,
that happened against Bordeaux at the
mm,
Principality last year. So I mean, Saints are having a great run of form. Castor are also playing pretty well
mm.
in the top 14. I think these are two very evenly matched sides. So that will be an exciting one to kick off the weekend. I think Toulon v Stormers, it will be a good matchup because these are two teams who have been very strong in the season, but have had dips here and there in the past few weeks. I will be interested to
Mm,
see what team John Dobson takes and if the
mm,
wider political climate has affected the flights available or the travel schedules for the South African side.
mm,
Toulon have had a drop of form recently, but they will be formidable at home. Obviously, Glasgow Warriors versus the Vodacom Bulls. It's a replay of the 2024 final. Apart from it's at Scotstoun rather than at Loftus. But Warriors are in form at the minute. They are playing some amazing rugby. And obviously, I will be watching Bordeaux, Begler versus Leicester Tigers. And Tigers have got silverware. They won the Prem Cup a few weeks ago. They're also coming off two strong wins against Bristol Bears and Gloucester in the Gallagher Prem. But also Bordeaux, they're one of the French giants. They're in form, and if they've got their full squad, wow, they're so dangerous. And we've spoken about Louis Biel-Barré so much on the channel throughout the Men's Six Nations, and I fear when he's got ball in hand, I know Leicester's defence is strong, but Louis Biel-Barré just finds space out of anywhere. So those are the ones that kind of take my interest most of all. But I think they're all interesting matchups for various reasons,
mm.
but we'll get onto that in this episode. Teams in the best form. Who do you think is coming into round 16 on top form and will probably look to get a win?
Yeah, I think definitely Bordeaux. We've spoken about them being champs and just their form in general. I think we've seen in the Six Nations how well France performed, and I think it will probably carry over into, the return of the Investec Champions Cup. I think at least Bordeaux will be hoping to build on that form.
Mm,
But yeah, I think definitely Bordeaux. I also think, as you've mentioned, Northampton Saints, I do think that they are a real contender to be in the knockout stages. And I also back them to win against Castres. But yeah, so I think those two teams. And yeah, I also think the South African teams, Stormers, Vodacom Bulls, I do think it's so difficult playing away from home,
Yeah.
especially in those conditions. For example, at Scotstoun, you've spoken about the conditions at
Yeah.
Scotstoun, and it's not pleasant for teams that are not used to it. And the
Mm.
weather in South Africa is still pretty warm. It feels like it's still full-blown summer and it should be,
I can't say the
autumn.
same for the
So I think
UK.
for the
Yeah.
Bulls, yeah, exactly. So I think it's going to be very tough for the Bulls to be traveling again and yeah, just going to Scotstoun. And also Glasgow's form is like in the URC, it's just been amazing. So I don't see the Bulls win, but I am hoping for it to be a close contest. And then for the Stormers as well, I think it's going to be interesting because Toulon is not really having their best season thus far. But again, will home ground advantage count in their favor this time around? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Just to touch on your point about Glasgow, they seem to be having the season of their lives at the minute, and particularly the last two rounds of the URC since coming back the men's Six Nations. They've been so impressive. I'll put a couple of the try highlights on the screen for you, but the one that stands out to me is Kyle Rose Chase. I can't remember which round it was. I think it was against Leinster, and just the way that like Leinster's the team you always want to be, isn't it? Isn't it? Like they always come really high up in the URC table, but have only won the
Yeah.
trophy once. So the fact that Warriors fronted up and had quite a young squad, and then against Benetton, you had Fergus Watson making his debut after coming through the academy, scoring on debut as well. I don't think we'll see him in the squad this week. However, the fact that Franco Smith has rotated his team in the way that he has means that they can prioritise what you would say is the strongest 15, despite injuries in the squad, which I don't think are actually that many, which is pretty good. Means that Glasgow are in a good position, but they are the story of the Champions Cup this season. I think like the win, beating Toulouse at home, beating Sarries, all of those are very impressive wins and sets a precedent for what we could see them deliver in the rest of the URC and the Investec Champions Cup. Totally agree about the Saints. They had a huge win over Saracens on Saturday at Tottenham Hotspurs in their showdown game. I think the scoreline was 17-21 to Saints. So that was a pretty big result for them. And they also rotated their squad against Newcastle Red Bulls in the Gallagher Prem the week after the Men's Six Nations finished. So they put out a pretty young squad, faced the Northeast English side, and still won, but only by 1 point. It was very close, but it means that you would think that Saints will go pretty strong for this fixture. Cast, but they had a big win in the top 14 last weekend, 49-17 against, please correct me because I am going to butcher this team's name, Montauban. Montauban? No, yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. But Cast had a big win anyway. And obviously Toulouse and Bordeaux, two big French giants, and they will be scary to watch. Teams not in great form coming into this. Who do you think?
Oh, I think Bristol Bays,
Yeah,
yeah, they just have not had, they just have not been on par. Yeah,
no,
their
yeah,
form
I
is not,
agree.
just has not been great. It's going to be interesting to see what will happen because I think, yes, Bristol Bays, but I also think Edinburgh, they've been so inconsistent throughout the URC, throughout the Champions Cup, and
Yeah.
somehow they still managed to be there and thereabouts. And
Somehow.
it's one of those teams, yeah, it's one of those teams you're not quite sure how they got there, but they are
Yeah.
there. They're in the round of 16. But yeah, they are very inconsistent. So I wouldn't say that, they're going into this with bad form necessarily or one of the worst teams, but it's just kind of a team where you don't know what to expect from them at the minute because they'll go on to beat a very good side, but then they'll lose to a side that's not as strong. So it's
Yeah.
difficult to predict how they'll perform. And I do think they have the players, so it's interesting to me, and I feel like previous seasons they really showed up.
Mm.
But they are also in between various competitions. Sometimes they're in the Champions Cup, sometimes they're in the Challenge Cup. So yeah, I think Edinburgh, sorry, and Bristol Bays, yeah, probably the teams with the worst form at the minute.
It's tough for Bristol. Well, I say it's tough. They lost to Leicester Tigers at Mattioli Woods Welford Road, which I was not sad about. Obviously, as you know, I am a Leicester fan. But that was a great game. It was a close
Mm,
contest game, and it was a great advert for what English rugby is in the Gallagher Prem. The week after, they have their big game at, or whatever, the show, not showdown. There were three games this weekend. They were all in different venues that weren't at rugby clubs. Well, at their own rugby clubs. They were all either at football stadiums or they were at the Principality. So Bristol hosted Quins at the Principality. It's a
mm.
great day out, amazing. But Quins beat them, and
Yeah.
Have been really quite poor.
Yeah.
Quite that's I'm putting
Yeah.
it nicely. They have been shocking at times in the Gallagher Prem this season, but they've had a very
Yeah.
different run of form in the Investec Champions Cup. And whether it was Quins gearing up to this weekend, where they face Sale, thinking we could potentially get to a quarter final here, and that would be pretty good for their season, given they've had a lot of injuries, they've had a lot of
Mm,
change of personnel
yeah.
in the club. Their CEO put out kind of an emergency statement earlier on in the season because of how poor the run of form had been. Maybe they were geared up against Bristol and thought, we've got a chance of winning this. Like at this point, what have we got to lose? And because the RFU have now
Mm,
ring fenced the Prem and have put loads of different regulations in, Quins can't go down. So what the hell have they got to lose when they play matches? So Bristol are coming into this with two losses on the bounce, really, against the French Giants. I personally don't see them winning this. Edinburgh lost the
mm,
Stormers and lost to the Lions on their tour of South Africa. The social
mm.
media content's been killing it, but the matches themselves, not great coming out of the
Mm,
Edinburgh camp. And then they have to travel to Leinster again. So they've had a lot of travel and not a lot of time to
mm,
be with family, connect with friends, or just some downtime back at home. So that's a pretty tough one. I was going to say Sale. They're kind of in this no man's land a minute at the Gallagher
mm,
Prem. I would say they haven't really got loads to fight for the rest of this season. And this is an opportunity where they
mm,
have got something to fight for. But at the Stoop, given
mm,
Quins have been poor in the league, but they've been good in
mm.
the Champions Cup. So I see that going in Quins' favour. So interesting what style of rugby Sale will bring and if they can get anything from that game. But I don't know. I think the Southwest London side will win. Potential dark horses. Any that come to mind?
Before I get to the dark horses, just on a point that you touched on there, where you said, Quins have been pretty good in the Champions Cup, but not really in the rest of the competitions. And I think that's something that we really see in a lot of the teams. You either focus
Yeah,
on the URC or you focus on the Champions Cup. And I think obviously the Champions Cup is the trophy to win. Obviously not, nothing against the URC. I think that's a massive competition and such an amazing competition on its own. But if you want to be the best of the best, then you need to go for the Champions Cup somewhere in your career or somewhere.
yeah,
Even the South African teams, I feel like they've not really pulled out all of the stops for the Champions Cup, which I also get because we invest more in the URC and we invest more of our time in the URC, because that's really where we thrive. But I am wondering, if we really pull out all the stops for the Champions Cup for one season, what would that look like or what would the outcome be? Just to kind of talk on that. But yeah, I think potential dark horses. I think Leicester. I really want to say Leicester. I think if they played different opposition, then I would have been like, okay, no, they might have
yeah,
this in the bag. But
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
think with Bordeaux being so strong, but yeah, I think Leicester can really give Bordeaux bit of an uphill battle. Well, I'm hoping for that because
Me too.
yeah, you turned me into a mini Leicester fan.
Yes,
Um,
heard it here first, guys.
yeah,
I've done my great
yeah,
conversion work.
yeah, but I mean, once the Champions Cup is over, then it's Nations Cup, and then there's no
Yeah,
more.
yeah, fair. Yeah, that is fair. That is fair.
But yeah, I think the real dark horse for me is Leicester Tigers. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Obviously, I've got to back the boys in green.
Mm,
Leicester have really found great form. their home form has been really strong this season
Mm.
for the most part. I
Yeah.
know Leinster beat them at home, but it was a close scoreline in the Gallagher Prem. I'm pretty sure they're undefeated in the season so far, and they've got silverware under their belt. And the way that Jeff Parling's rotated the squad, there's one guy in the squad called Harry Palmer, and he plays in the forwards, and I think he's like 18 years old. And he is now becoming like a first pick. I don't think he'll be a first pick for this weekend, but he might be because we've got quite a lot of injuries in the second and back row at the minute. So I wouldn't be
Mm.
surprised if he starts. Chesham's going to be rested given he played
Mm.
against Bristol and Gloucester and they need to rest after the Six Nations. Joe Hayes will be the same. Nicky Smith, who played for Wales, will also be the same. So we've lost a lot of our like marquee international players this weekend, but
Mm.
Leicester Tigers have won in Bordeaux before. Maybe not against a team this caliber, of this strength,
Mm.
but they have done it. And I think there's something really strong in the side at the minute. There is this good sense of belief, and whatever Jeff Parling is doing, I'm rallying behind it. I think Michael Checker last season did a lot of
Mm.
good work, but I think they lost 80-10 or something like that to Toulouse last season. I think in the pool stages. Now, that will be weighing heavy in their minds. They do not want a
Mm.
performance like that against Bordeaux. I'm hoping for a good game. I'll get on to my predictions. I
Mhm.
think we could see Leicester really challenge Bordeaux, but if Bordeaux score within a couple of opening minutes, it'll be hard to stop. So the difficulty is against Gloucester, they scored three a bonus point try in probably the shortest period of time of any of the clubs this season because Gloucester's defence just was non-existent for the first 20 minutes. And then the second half, I think the standards for both teams dropped off and Gloucester kind of got their foot back in the game a little bit. So it's probably not the best game to prepare them for this fixture, but they'll be going into this game fighting. Quins, I think, could be potential dark horses because I only say that because they've been so poor in the Gallagher Prem for the most part. And then they will pull out these
Yeah.
performances from their pockets and go, actually, no, this is what we can do. Tee-hee.
Yeah.
Like, I feel that it's just been very much Quins this season. So if we were going off Champions Cup form, no, they're not dark horses. But if we're going off overall season form, absolutely they are. I don't know. I feel like Bulls could be dark horses, but I just think the way
Mm.
that they've had an up and down season, how good Warriors are at the minute, and Scotstoun is a fortress right now and has
Mm.
been for a long time. I don't think that will be the case. But yeah, I'm hoping for a good contest. Shall we move on to predictions?
Let's go.
Cool. Starting on Friday. Saints v Cast. Who do you think will win?
I do think Saints will win, and I think a solid win. Not going to give scores or, by this many points, but I do think Saints will win.
I'm going to say same. Saints go marching in at Cinch Stadium at Franklin's Gardens. Toulon v Stormers. Ooh, this I think this one's one of the most difficult to call. What do you think?
I am going with home ground advantage with this one, and just because of the travel, and as I've mentioned, it's been really warm in South Africa at the minute, and now to be traveling to Europe, like it's very tough. And I also think it will all depend on the team that John Dobson will
I
select.
agree.
Is he going to put out the strongest team? Is he, would he rather save his players for the URC? What's he going to do? But I do think that the home ground advantage in this sense will be the decider. So ugh, I don't like saying it, but I think Toulon will win.
Really? You think I'm going with the Stormers? And I did write on my
Oh,
notes. I think it depends on what team John Dobson sends. Totally agree with you
yeah.
there. The travel. Toulon is in the south of France, though. So their weather is very different to the weather that I'm currently
Mm,
experiencing in England, which is a bit ridiculous, really, for the end of March. Anyway, um, so it won't be anywhere near as bad, but it won't be as hot by South
that's true.
African
Mm,
standards. So I am going to say the Stormers. I just think they'll clutch it in the final few minutes.
I like it.
English Derby, Bath v Sarries. Who do you think will win?
I'm going with Bath. I think it will be tight and I think it will be a
Yeah,
close game. But I am going with Bath, and I think it could all come down to discipline and kicking, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm there with you on the tubs for a win at the Rec. I think Sarries have
Mm.
been a bit off the pace, and Bath are coming into this off some strong wins. And as we've spoken about, Finn Russell, if he's on fire and then the back line's on fire, they're going to score loads of tries. But I think this will be that will be a gritty one. Toulouse v Bristol. I hate these are two teams which, from a personal perspective, I'm saying this as a Leicester Tigers fan. I don't really like either of these teams when I'm talking from a fan's point of view. Bristol have been our niggle team for a long time, so I'm glad we beat them 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
And Toulouse, they're just the French giants. And I
Yeah.
guess from an English perspective, anybody but the French. So, but I do have to say, I think Toulouse will win this one.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think Toulouse, and I think it might be by a big margin. Just think
Mm.
Toulouse have been so successful in the history of the competition. And yeah, I just think seeing how Bristol's form have been in the competition, I can't see Toulouse losing.
Yeah, I agree. Bristol have also had a hell of a lot of injuries in their squad this season, which
Mm.
has been pretty tough to manage. Okay, moving further up north, Glasgow versus the Vodacom Bulls. Who do you think will take it at Scotstoun?
I think I gave my predictions earlier, and I also hate saying it, but I just think the conditions and just the momentum of Glasgow at the moment will be the key decider. And I don't see the Bull. I see it being a competitive match, hopefully. But yeah, I do think Glasgow will win.
I'm once a warrior, always a warrior. Glasgow for the win for me on that one. Harlequins versus Sale. Whew, I think this is a tough one to call. They're both very close together in the Gallagher Prem table, kind of both having iffy bits of form, but it's at the Stoop. Quins have been very strong in this competition, so I'm going to say the Jokers for the win on this occasion.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think this is probably one of the more difficult ones to call. I
Mm,
think beside Toulon Stormers, I think this
yeah.
is quite a difficult one to call. But I also think Harlequins at the Stoop, I just think Harlequins attacking will kind of be the deal breaker. So yeah, going with Quins.
Yeah, absolutely. Bordeaux Begler versus Leicester Tigers. Obviously, my heart is with Tigers, always will be. But objectively speaking, talking with my head, it's the current reigning champions. This is the one that we feared we were getting. Quins did not do us a favour. We would have dropped into the Challenge Cup
Yeah.
and I think could have won it, given we've been on pretty good form. But
Yeah.
anyway, we're in this competition that's absolutely fine and they'll give it their best shot. But objectively speaking, I do think Bordeaux will win. But I would never put money on that. I will always back Leicester.
No, as you should. And yeah, I just think you always back your team. So yeah, I do think Bordeaux will win. I think Leicester have been very strong at home, but not so much away from home.
Mm.
So I do think Bordeaux will take this one. Sorry.
No, no, it's a reasonable prediction. And
Yeah,
I think you're right. They've been close on away occasions,
yeah.
and also not taking necessarily full strength teams away
Mm.
in this competition so far. But yeah, Bordeaux potentially could overpower them. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
yeah.
But anyway. And then the final one, I think this one's a little bit easier to call. Leinster
Mm.
versus Edinburgh. It's at Leinster's ground, so I'm saying the Irish side to win and win fairly comfortably.
Yeah, I think Leinster will win convincingly. I would love an upset, and I would love
Oh,
for
me too.
Edinburgh to be inconsistent and beat Leinster in this regard. But I mean, Edinburgh is so unpredictable. It can happen or it won't happen. I feel like they'll either edge it or they'll lose by just a big margin. Like Leinster will just walk all over them. So, but yeah, I think it will be the latter.
Yeah, I think maybe if you're a Scottish fan, you're more likely going to be thinking that
Yeah.
Glasgow will get the win out of the two teams this weekend compared to Edinburgh, particularly given all of the horrible travel that they've had to do recently.
Oh,
But there's
yeah.
so many games to watch. I will be watching a couple of them. I'm sure it's going to be a very busy weekend, but that's all we've got time for on this episode of Her Side of the Ruck. Thank you so much for joining us and being back with us again. If you are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like it too. That's all we've got time for. We're going to sign off. I'm Tash, signing off from the UK.
I'm Bernice signing off from SA.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.